So first question, I guess, what is Qualtrics? You probably have a fair idea having signed up to the training, but Qualtrics is a survey tool. It's one of two survey tools that are kind of supported at the university, the other one being Google Forms. So what's the difference between the two? Why would you use one over the other? If we start with Google Forms, some of you may have been to some of our Google Forms training sessions, and it's very intuitive. It's quick and easy to use. It's easy to lock down to members of the university. It can collect things like people's York email addresses easily. It can link up to a Google Sheet to allow you to analyze the data in real time. So for a lot of the time, Google Forms is really good. But sometimes you might find Google Forms can't quite do what you want, which is where Qualtrics might come in, because Qualtrics is a bit more advanced than Google Forms. And that's in a good way and a bad way. It means it's a little bit more challenging to get to grips with, but you can do more with it if you need to. So it's got more question types than Google. You can do rich text editing, allowing you to, put a lot more customization into how your questions appear and how your forms appear. Advanced branching options, that's sort of how you decide which questions display to which people. You can do a little bit of that in Forms, jumping between sections, but you can do a lot more of it in Qualtrics. Embedded data is one thing that Qualtrics can do that Forms can't. And what that means is if you have a list of people who you know are filling out your survey and you have some data about them, you can actually feed that data in directly into your data without having to ask for it. So if you've got a list of students and student numbers and departments, you don't have to ask them that information. You can just have that saved within Qualtrics, and you can get Qualtrics to do things with that information as well. You might say, okay, I only want certain questions in this survey to display if you're in biology, or different ones if you're in chemistry or something like that. You can get it to show you different things depending on what data you have about contact. You can send out email follow-ups and reminders. You can automate that as well. You can get the survey to close after a certain date and open after a certain date. Again, you can't do any of this in Forms. Forms is a little bit more basic. In terms of what they look like, just bring up a quick side-by-side demo. And yeah, on the left, you'll see a Google form, probably familiar to most of you. You get these sent out quite often. And over on the right, that is what a Qualtrics form looks like. So again, you may have seen these without realizing it was Qualtrics. This is the university branded one, but that's kind of the look and feel of the two tools. So that being said, how do you actually get into Qualtrics is the next question. So what you don't want to do, unfortunately, is just go straight to the Qualtrics homepage and try and sign in. You need to use the York link for Qualtrics to make sure you're signing in with your York licensed account, because basically otherwise it'll just ask you to create a free account, which will be very limited. But if you go to this Qualtrics page on the university website, so just search Qualtrics in the top corner on the university website, and then use this purple button. In fact, shall I stick that link in the chat for anyone who wants it now?
To it, Simon.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, you got it twice now. So yeah, go there. You can bookmark it if it's something you're going to be using regularly. And then just click on Open Qualtrics. And that should, yeah, ask for your username and password. And that's just your university standard one. It'll probably then ask you for a Duo login. So make sure you've got your phone with you, as with all things these days. I'm going to approve that. And then once it logs me in, I'll be at the Qualtrics homepage. Now, another thing to mention, which may or may not happen today, Qualtrics can be a bit slow sometimes. Yeah, sometimes when you're loading things like data, if you've got a load of responses from your survey, you might need to wait 30 seconds. Not always, just occasionally. Doesn't mean it's broken, it just means it is sometimes a bit slow. So I'm in the Qualtrics homepage. What do I do from here? Well, I've got a little menu over at the top, and that has a whole load of areas I can go to in Qualtrics. Now, the one we're going to be looking at really is projects, because that is where you build surveys. All these other ones, things like library, you can save customized email messages you want to save out, directories, you can save directories of people and contact details. We're not going to look at that today because it's just a whistle-stop tour. So projects is what you want to start building a survey. When I click on that, it's going to load my recently used projects. It could be ones that I've created, or it could be ones that have been shared with me. So you can share surveys between different users as well and work on them together. But actually, what I want to do is create a new survey. So I'm going to go over to create project, click on that. I'm going to choose a survey and get started. What should I call it? Now, I usually do a cheese survey, but I'm going to shock John and change the subject because we're getting near to Christmas. I'm going to do a Christmas survey. Just decided 5 minutes before we started. Let's call it Christmas, and we'll create a blank one. You could import files if you had survey saved in that specific format, or you could copy an existing Qualtrics survey if you wanted to use kind of a similar template, but we're going to do a blank one. Okay. Again, give that a second to load. But once it does, I should be within the survey menu. Okay, so as I mentioned, Qualtrics isn't necessarily as easy on the eye as Google Forms. There's a lot more going on. So the menus to be aware of, across the top here, this is the different kind of sections that you can look at within a survey. So survey just means you're building your survey, you're adding your questions, you're changing the settings and so on. Workflows is where you can sort of automate certain things and set triggers. For example, if you want a follow-up email to go to certain people if they've answered a certain way to a certain question. I'm not going to look at that really today. Distributions is how you send it out, which we will touch on. And then the last three are really just about looking at your data once you've had a few people fill your survey in. But that's not the only menu. We've got this menu as well down the side within the survey building section. So builder, obviously that's you building the survey. That's what we're going to be in for to start with. You've got survey flow, which is how you set the different sections of the survey and so on. Look and feel, that's what it says on the tin. Survey options, that's where you can set various things about who can fill out the survey and so on. So that is reasonably important, so we will come to that. The last two, quotas and translations, again, not really got time to touch on them in a brief session. But yes, let's start building a survey. So you'll see here, what I have is question blocks. Now, each question block can have several questions in it, but a block is basically those questions appear as one page. So it's called sections in Google Forms. So if you've got a long survey, you'll probably want to split it up into different blocks rather than having a really long thing people have to scroll through. So let's write a question. So I'm just going to say, do you like Christmas? Quite a simple one. Now, Qualtrics has given me some automated options here, which I may or may not like. In this case, I don't like them. So I can just click on any of those options, change what it says. I'll change that to yes and no. If I want to get rid of an option, I can click on this drop down here, just do remove choice. Or over here on the question menu, I can also increase and decrease my number of options for that. But I think that's just going to be a simple yes, no. So I only want the two questions there. Now, you have to choose your question type, obviously. You can change that once you've created your question. I might want to say, actually, I'll put that as text entry. I'll let people say whatever they like there. If you're going to be kind of analyzing data, you'd want a multiple choice question to give you clear groupings. If you leave that as text entry, some people might write, yes, I love it. Someone might write, yeah, it's great. Some might write absolutely, and they're all coming out as different answers when you come to sort of analyze your data. But sometimes text entry questions will be appropriate. So I've got that. Let's scroll down a bit. I only want to allow one answer. I don't want them to be able to choose yes and no. I can change how it appears. So format as a list could be a drop-down menu. If you've got a really long list of options, that might be the one to use. But actually, I think a list is fine here. I could get it going horizontally instead of vertically. I could change where the labels appear. Again, this is all stuff you can't do in Google Forms quite as much. And then response requirements. So add requirements is basically, if I toggle that on, that is if I really want people to answer this particular question, then I can either force a response, which means they have to answer it or they can't progress with the survey. I'm sure you've all experienced that. You're trying to fill a survey and you try and hit next and it doesn't let you, and then you have to go back and fill in a certain answer. Or there is kind of the softer option, which is request response. And what that will do, it will bring up a little pop-up if someone doesn't answer the question saying, oh, we'd really like you to answer this question, but you can skip it if you want to. So again, there's a little bit more flexibility than in Google Forms where it's simple, mandatory or not. You got that kind of in-between option. But I'm going to force response here. This question is quite important for me, I think. Right, so we've got one question. Let's add another question, which I can do just by clicking on this button, add new question. And then it's going to ask me what kind of question. So this one I want to be text entry. And you will see there's a long old list of question types. There's all kinds of things. You can ask people to submit a video answer. You can do signatures, heat maps. There's all kinds of things, again, which Google Forms can't do. We're just going to look at some of the more common ones today. For this question, I want to be, what is your favorite Christmas song? Okay. Now I could make that multiple choice and start adding, you know, Last Christmas and all sorts of things, but people might have really obscure choices. It's going to end up with a never-ending list. So I'll leave that one open as text entry, I think. But what I do want to do is I want to make sure that not everyone has to answer this question. Because if you've been asked, do you like Christmas, and you choose no, you don't want to then get asked a load of questions about your favorite things about Christmas. So that is when I'm going to add a question block. So I'm going on add block. I'm going to call this, oh, nearly wrote cheese, Christmas lovers. This is where the questions will go that only people who like Christmas should answer. So that's where I'm setting up some branching in the survey. And I want to move this question down into there. Now, if you hover near the top of the question, you'll see this little compass icon. I click and drag. I can then move the question around within a section or to a new section. Okay, so happy with that question. Let's add a new one. And this one, let's make it another multiple choice. I'm going to make it, have you put your Christmas tree up yet? Again, they want all these options. I only want it yes or no. Get rid of that one. And that one. Oh, I forgot to set whether the Christmas song one was mandatory. I'm just going to request a response on that one. Have you put your Christmas tree up yet? I'm going to do the same. I'm going to make that one request the response. Okay, so that's another simple multiple choice question. Another question, I think, which this time, let's make it, yeah, maybe text entry, because I want to say, when did you put up your Christmas tree? Right, but I want that to be a date, and there isn't a date option in question type. So that is where add validation comes in handy. So if I toggle on add validation, that allows me to set various parameters that people can answer for that question. So it might want to be minimum length, I might want, or maximum length, I might want them to not write more than 20 characters or something. I might want it to be a specific type of content, like a valid email address. In this case, I want it to be a date. Okay. I can set the date format, so I don't want that American format. I want the old UK one. And that means if anyone tries to put something that's not a date into that question, it's not going to allow them to. And again, that's just making sure my data is valid and is usable. Okay. That's enough questions for the cheese lovers, I think. Let's add a bit for cheese. I keep saying cheese. Christmas haters. Although they might have cheese at Christmas, I suppose. Let's add a question for the Christmas haters. This one is going to be multiple choice, and it's going to be, why don't you like Christmas? I really want to get to the bottom of this. Again, the suggestions aren't helpful. Too cold, maybe? Too expensive? Have to work over Christmas? Could be another one. And then I could, if I want, add an other field. And if I want them to be able to kind of give me a bit more information about that other option, what I would do is allow text entry. And you'll see there a little text box appears under that. So if somebody chooses other, they can then tell me a little bit about why they don't like Christmas. But there might be more than one of these reasons that they agree with. So I'm going to allow multiple answers. And you'll see that changes from the kind of circular radio buttons to the square checkboxes, which we recognize that as meaning, okay, I can tick more than one of these. Again, I could add some validation on that. I might want them to select at least two of those options, or between 1 and 3. In fact, I don't want to set any validation on there, but you can do it for different question types. Okay, so that is, why don't you like Christmas? And then I think I'll have one final question, but this is going to be for everyone. And so I'll just call this last section, and a new question. And this one, I'm going to use sliders. Because I'm going to say, how would you rate each of these festive foods? Okay, so could be pigs in blankets. That might be Christmas pudding. And let's say turkey. Okay, so that is going to allow people to give a rating for each one of these foods. And you can customize that as well. I could add more or remove some. I could set the cursor to start in a certain place. If I really want to suggest that people love pigs in blankets, then I could get it automatically starting up there. But yeah, I can set the scale as well. So 100 seems a little bit too granular. I don't think people really want to go into that much detail. They might maybe want to go out of 10. That might be acceptable. And I could add labels as well, because you might think, well, does 10 mean good or does 10 mean bad? I think in this case it's fairly obvious, but let's write a few labels anyway. So dislike, neither like or dislike, and then like. Okay. I'm going to make that one mandatory, so I'm going to force a response there. Okay. So we've built our form. Now, how do we kind of look at how it's coming along? How's it going to look to the end user? That is when I want to go to preview up here. So if I hit preview, that is going to bring up a preview of the form, funnily enough, which looks as it will to the user. And the good thing about Qualtrics as well, it gives you a little mobile display as well over on the right. And so you can see how it's displaying on mobile devices. So, and then I can test my survey, see it's doing everything I want it to. Absolutely recommend that you do this as well before sending it out. So if I say, do you like Christmas? So let me test it out by saying no. But then it's still asking me all these questions that were meant to be for the Christmas lovers. You see there, it's requesting my response to those two questions, but I can continue without answering. And then it's got this. Yeah, it's letting me click more than one. But actually, there's some stuff I need to change on this, isn't there? I need to come out of there because I want it to send people to different sections depending on their answer to certain questions. So how am I going to do that? Well, that is where this survey flow menu comes in. Okay, so once I've opened this, you'll see I've got all my blocks here, but I can also add some conditions. So let me show you for an example. So if I go add below, under the first question block, and then I choose a branch, add a condition. So for do you like Christmas, if they choose yes, and then I need to say what's going to happen if they choose yes. But what I actually want to do is that I want this Christmas lovers section to be displayed. Okay, so I've set up that branch there, and then I want to do the same. If I want to set up a branch for people who say no to that question. And again, you could, this doesn't have to be the answer to a question. This could be things like embedded data. You could have it branching depending on various data. But if no is selected, and then I'm going to move the Christmas haters section to there. So you can see that the branch is appearing as I add them. So that's kind of a way to see that all the logic you've set up for your survey. You need to remember to hit apply for it to save those changes. Another difference to Google Forms. But once I've done that, if I go back into my survey and preview it, then hopefully, if I choose no for do you like Christmas, yeah, it's going to jump me straight to this why don't you like Christmas? And then I'm still seeing all these options. Okay, but if I restart the survey, if I choose yes, it's giving me this Christmas lovers section. And then it should be skipping the Christmas haters section and going straight to the end. Yeah, so it's working as I want it to. There are other places you can set logic as well. For example, if we look on this second page here, have you put up your Christmas tree yet? If I choose no, I've still got when did you put up your Christmas tree there, which doesn't make sense for me to still be seeing that question if I've not put it up yet. So you can get questions to display or not, kind of within the survey builder menu itself as well. So if I go so that when did you put up your Christmas tree question? And scroll down a bit, I can go display logic. And then I only want the question to display if the answer to have you put your Christmas tree up yet was yes. Okay. So then if I've not put yes to that question, to this question, it's not going to show me the one after. So you can add branching logic kind of in either one of those ways. Okay, very quickly look at a couple of the other menu items on the left. So we looked at survey flow, look and feel. This allows you to customize how your survey looks. Oh, it's asking me to take a survey. So there's themes. There's University of York themes that are in existence that you can choose. By default, it will be this one, or you can kind of choose one of the preset layouts. You can add text to your next button. You can add a progress bar, which is useful if you've got a really long survey, so people can see how much of the way they are through filling it in. Choose where that appears. I haven't actually added a back button yet, but I can do that. Style, you can set the color scheme, you can set the font, all things like this. Again, you got quite granular control over this. Oh, this is new, page transition. So yeah, you can have it sliding or fading from one page to the next. And yeah, you can change things like the background color and so on. Survey options. Oh, so if I've made changes, I need to remember to hit apply, which I didn't there. But luckily it prompted me. Survey options. In fact, I think, John, you're going to go into survey options, aren't you? So I won't steal your thunder on those ones. But that is where you're going to set a lot of the settings for how your responses come in, security options and things like that. But I think that's me pretty much done. So the only other thing I want to show is how to add a collaborator. And that is if I want somebody else to be able to work on the survey with me, to add their own questions, to move things around. So to do that, I go to Tools. Oh, one other thing you can do in here, generate test responses. That's useful. It basically automatically generates some responses to your survey. There's still no substitute for going and clicking through it yourself and getting your colleagues to have a look, but this will generate a load of test responses and give you some data to work with before you've actually sent it out. But what I want is collaborate. And then I want to add the person I want to collaborate with. Now, everyone at York should be in here. John's there under 2 accounts because there's a non-personal one as well. But I think you wanted me to use this one. Is that right? Yeah. If you don't find someone when you start typing the name, it might be that they've never signed into Qualtrics. And so their account hasn't technically been created yet. So once they've signed in once with the York account, then it will create the Qualtrics account. You can collaborate with external people as well, but obviously they need a Qualtrics account. I'm going to go add selected. I can set what permissions I want John to have. I could say I don't want him to be able to copy it, or even I don't want him to be able to edit it. You can even go a bit more specific than that. But I think in this case, I'm fine with just giving him all the permissions. If I choose save, that should then send an email to John telling me that I've shared it with him, and he should then be able to open the survey within Qualtrics.
So I've got an important notification here that has just popped up. Actually, Simon shared Christmas with you, which is very kind of Simon to do. I was wondering what I'd be doing this year, so thanks, Simon. I've also got, I'll put this little disclaimer out here. Qualtrics' support pages and training goes very in depth and is very good. So if this is going to become your survey platform of choice, if you're thinking that you've got a particular project in mind and you really want to dig into this, then they've got their own platform. It's called XM Basecamp, and you create a little login for it. And you go to Basecamp, and it's got all sorts of training available there. Obviously, it's not as good as us, but it is very useful for if you want to dig in much further. And they're fantastic in terms of support tickets. Of course, you can bounce things through to us, but sometimes we might have to bounce things to them if it's an issue on their end. So yeah, by all means, have a little look at XM Basecamp there. As it is, I've got some different surveys on the left here. I've got my own ones here, but I'm going to find my way to Simon's Christmas survey right now. And I'm going to dig into some of the options we've got. And one of the biggest battles with Qualtrics is just remembering where things are and how many things are available, because there's some options in there that are very specific for the use cases that you maybe your particular survey, but not for simple quick ones where Google Forms might just save you a bit of a job. So again, we've looked at Survey Builder here, and look at this. I've got this little note warning here. It's not like Google where we see the people in the corner, or we have, we can see Simon's name. I can see multiple people are editing this survey, and you might impact each other's changes. So perhaps we want to communicate whilst we're doing this at the same time. As it is, I can trust Simon's going to keep his mitts off this for the time being. But if I go to my left-hand pane over here, we were living in the Survey Builder. We're going to bounce here now to the survey options, because of course, when we're sharing surveys out, we need to think about who we're sharing them with, what we want them to be able to do with it. The very first thing I would recommend changing, and I hate that it's on by default, is the display name and description of your survey. We'll come on to publishing this and sending it out a little bit later, but the display name here is how it will appear in these browser tabs, and everything by default is Qualtrics Survey, Qualtrics Experience Management. So I would probably want to rename this to Christmas Survey. And the other thing it's got is this survey description, which is the most powerful, simple, and trusted way to gather experience data. I don't really want to do your marketing for you, Qualtrics. I'm going to choose my own survey description here and go for a survey that is about Christmas. Very descriptive. Of course, I could put more in there. I could give information about how long the survey may take. I could give any information about what I'm going to do with the data, all that sort of thing there. So survey description worth changing before you send this out. I'm not going to go through every single setting here, but I'm going to pick out some key ones. Of course, we can change our base language in the translation tab, which is down here. We have got question numbers. I quite like to have that on. It's really useful, and as it gives you a little recommendation here, add a progress bar through the look and feel section if you want to indicate the progress, but question numbers can be quite useful for respondents. Expert review, you might have seen as Simon was going, it was giving him feedback on the expert review to recommend improvements, particularly around accessibility. So as we were building our survey, our expert review score was great, but we could click on this and look for improvements to our survey if we want. It's a little bit like your credit score, isn't it? You can see where it is on the scale and optimize it to your heart's content. Back into survey options here now, though. We've got question numbers, we've got expert review. Now, this is one for kind of more for the people that are already using Qualtrics. Qualtrics brought out its new survey taking experience with improved performance, better usability on mobile platforms, and so on. Essentially, it changed the layout a little bit. It's really, you can toggle it off if you like the old view better than the new view. For most kind of people, having that on might not be a bad thing to have on. I think it's more about mobile reflow than anything, but mobile reflow was generally quite good before. I would say do a bit of back and forth, turn it on, see how it looks, turn it off, see how it looks and which you prefer for your length of survey, your style of survey, and particularly if you've done any rich text editing or particular editing with the format. We're just going to keep that off for now. So that's general. Let's have a look at responses. So as Simon mentioned earlier, we can add a back button if we want people to go back between different sections. When we're in the midst of some survey flow stuff between survey blocks, obviously, it might be that you're actually continuing through that section and the back button might not appear. But again, nice one to tap on for user experience. Allowing respondents to finish later or not, by default, this is on. So we can distribute this in a number of ways. One of these is an anonymous link, a bit like a URL that we use to distribute a Google form. If we want to allow people to finish later, then we could toggle that on, and it would mean they can go back to that link and go and finish it later. Now that will use IP tracking and caching to kind of check through who's, what level of progress it was at. We also have a personalized link, so we can send things out to specific people. And if you have this off, they'll still be able to do that either way. They'll be able to go and continue their progress later on. We've got custom error messages. When people try and script a required question, you can toggle those on and off. This is a really important one if you're looking to analyze your data afterwards. What do we do with incomplete survey responses? If someone's gone onto your form and they've had a go at it, but they got bored halfway through, and you've got some half-finished responses, what do we want to do with those? Do we want to record them or delete them? And we can set the period of time that we consider them to be incomplete. Are we giving them a really short time frame, like you've got 1 hour to do this, or are we giving them a little bit longer? Now, if we delete those responses with this current setting, it would mean that anything that is incomplete, that hasn't actually submitted the survey, after a week, it will delete all those responses. If I had it as record as it's set here, then it is going to record those responses as well, even if they're half finished. So think about that for your data collection. What do you want? Would you rather have those unfinished responses or not? Your choice. And then, of course, you can change all sorts of things around that when you determine when that starts, the time that starts at. We've got surveyability as well, availability here. So we can leave it open, or this is a slight advantage for Qualtrics over Google Forms, set a specific start and expiration date. So we can automatically toggle it to finish at a certain time, to stop collecting responses. You can do that in a sense with some app scripting in Google Forms, but it's not built into the platform. So this is really useful. We can say, we're going to start it at this time, we're going to finish it at a certain time. The slight caveat here is if you've not gone into this section before or altered your account settings, your default time zone is usually set to be Utah time, bizarrely, in America, because that's kind of where Qualtrics is based. So I've altered mine here, but you might be thinking that you're setting it to finish at 12 midnight UK time, and you're accidentally doing that at Utah time, which is great if you're working with people from Utah, but not from this country. So if we want to change that, we can go to my account and we can go to account settings, and it's good time just to kind of show you where account settings is anyway. So sorts of things I can change here, but there we go. We've got time zone here. See, we just changed that to Dublin, Edinburgh, Lisbon, London, or whichever time zone you're working in, if you're working internationally. Okay, so account settings there, you can do some little toggles there, but that's the main one to look for, is the change time. And we can also set an inactive survey message. So if you've turned off that survey collection, you've turned off the ability to actually collect responses, you can set a custom message to appear there to say, sorry, this survey is no longer collecting responses. Okay, so again, a lot of that is quite similar to what we've got in Google Forms, but with a bit of extra customization there. Going into security then. So again, we can change our survey access. So available to anyone means that once we publish it, because the difference between Qualtrics and Google Forms, we actually have to hit the publish button before it's live. So we can do changes behind the scenes and then hit publish for it to become live. But we can set it to be available to anyone. So anyone you give that a link to or email can complete it, or just people by invitation only if you want just specific people to be filling it out. We can add a password to our survey if we want to lock it down further. We can prevent multiple submissions. So again, if we want it to be just filled in once, again, the disclaimer, people that really want to spam your survey will probably find a way of doing it. That's the same with all survey tools, unfortunately. None of them are particularly infallible, but it does have the option to prevent multiple submissions and bot detection. So if, again, it's not completely foolproof, but you can turn bot detection on, and it will allow some capture there to try and filter out bots. And you can add security scans and all sorts of other security things there. You can also prevent indexing. So if you don't want this to be appearing in Google search results, so if I search Simon Craft Christmas survey, hopefully it wouldn't appear as the Google's #1 result at the moment. But if we want to actually have people be able to find this by search, we can toggle this off there. We have file upload type questions as well. So again, we can indicate here who we want to have access to those files. Is it just permissions with just users with permissions to view responses, or anyone with the link to the file. So people that don't have access to the survey itself, but maybe have access to the location where the file sits. Do we want them to have access or not? And again, anonymized responses. So by default, this Qualtrics will track people's IP address to kind of work with that caching in terms of allowing people to finish off responses later. If we want to make it truly, truly anonymous, we can toggle on anonymized responses. Of course, don't get caught up there by having a name question and an email address and then toggling this on, because that's not anonymous, is it? But again, if you've got something truly anonymous, you need to make sure you need to toggle this anonymized responses here if you don't want IP addresses tracked. Okay. Post survey, we can send a lovely thank you. You know, the way that Qualtrics works slightly differently to Forms is a lot of the templates, messages, contact lists, custom responses are saved in either a personal library or a global library for Qualtrics, depending on how you save an item. So if I wrote a new message here for a new thank you email, I've got the option of saving that to my library. And then that means that if I'm going to use that on another survey, it just saves me having to do it again. I can load that canned response from what I've saved in my library earlier. And again, we can have email triggers here so that when something happens, I can send an email on survey complete. I can say thank you. I can add on a personalized message. I can do something with piped text. So what I could do is I could send something depending on the answer to do like Christmas being yes. I could pop that in this email response here. So I could have, I understand that you have answered, and then put in my pipe text, yes, to this question. And it's going to filter through that response. So pipe text is really useful if you want to kind of personalize responses, personalize messages. So again, we could, anyone that's answered, why don't you like Christmas is too cold? I could have a little email message here to say, thank you. I see that you have said this is too cold. Have you considered the following? I don't think anyone would appreciate that, but there we go. It's an option there if you want to personalize responses. You can do contact lists as well. Again, if you're looking at sending out surveys to big contact lists, I'm not going to click this button because it's very slow to load. You can add a contact list. It could be a CSV file. It could be an Excel file, just filled with contact list information. And yeah, that could maybe make it easier to send out surveys via a contact list here if you want. We're running short on time, so I'm going to just quickly lip service a few things before I show you publish and send this out into the world. We've got quotas. Quotas, I'm going to show you from one that we've done earlier. This is our induction survey for our Your Create Makerspace. We've set up quotas here to like set limits on places for people that can sign up. So I can set this amount and I can set what happens when someone answers in my survey that they want to attend an induction on Friday, 11th of October. I'm going to increment the quota. And then in my form itself, I've got some display logic to say, let's find it. Go to edit display logic. Display this choice only if the following condition is met. Only if that quota has not been met yet, can you show this response? Can you actually select this option? Otherwise, it won't be displayed. So yeah, quotas are great for if you want to set up limitations on your form there. You've also got translations. You can request a paid translation, but you can also set, if you add a language, you can use Google Translate built in with it to translate your various questions. Again, if you're working internationally, that could be useful. More often than not, people have got Translate built into Chrome now anyway, so they can translate it. But yeah, if you're working internationally, that can be useful. Workflows are like automations. They're like triggers. So we can create a workflow to do a thing when another thing happens, in a nutshell. So back in my Your Create survey here, I've got a workflow set up so that whenever any of these conditions are true, the trigger is send an email. So that sends me an email based on these events happening. There's so many things you can do with workflows to automate it. So I'm not going to dig in much further. But again, if you want things to happen when the form is filled in, workflows is your place to do that. Okay, so that was a bit of just a quick whip round some of those things. Let's have a look at how to actually publish this and send it out into the world. So as Simon's been showing you, I can do a preview here to make sure it's behaving correctly. But the main thing I want to do now is actually publish this Christmas survey. So I'm going to hit the publish button. I can add a description for the version history because we do have version history built into Qualtrics as well, which is nice. From the little tools menu over here, you can actually see the different versions, view version history and restore versions if you want to, which is nice. But let's go to publish again, use a published version, and I'm going to hit publish. Give it a second. Now I can just click copy link here, and that's like when we send a link out in Google Forms. I'm going to send that one in chat right now and see that hopefully people can fill that in. But if you really want to get into how to distribute it, you want to go to the distributions tab over here. Now, distributions has got all different ways that you can send this out. The anonymous link is the link I've just sent out to you. I can copy that link. I can host it on a web server. I can also go to email here. So if I want to write a personalized email to people, I can compose an email. I can set the from address because by default it's do not reply at york.ac.uk. If I want to send that from a different email address, I can. I can choose when to send it. If I had a contact list here, I could add that contact list there. I don't have one at the moment. I want to have a subject in, so we don't just have a no subject email because that's a bit messy. Then I've got my message, and by default, it looks like this. It uses that pipe text I showed you earlier. Follow this link to the survey, and it grabs the link to the survey, or copy and paste the URL below into your internet browser, and it grabs that link there. Of course, we can change this around. We can do all sorts of other pipe logic and various clever things. Or if we just want a really basic email, we can do that too. And you can send a preview email. So if you're a bit nervous about sending it out to the world, you can just do a little preview email and see what's going on. And let's just, isn't it actually, let me come out of that there, cancel. We've got personal links if you want to send out links, generate links for just custom distribution for just individuals. We've got SMS, we've got access codes, we've got social media if you want to share it directly via Twitter. It's a bit of an old logo that now. I refuse to call it X still. It's Twitter. But you can send it to Twitter if you want. You can submit it to Reddit if you want. You can generate QR codes. So if you're creating posters, again, you can just have a pre-canned QR code here nicely. We can download it. So we can send that out. It's in chat there now. Hopefully I've got a few responses coming in because I'm going to go to the data and analysis tab and see what's coming out. Did we not get anything through it? Has no one completed it yet? Do I need to send that out again? Let's go for another anonymous link. Oh, Victoria's done it. Thank you, Victoria. Let's see. Maybe in results we'll start to see it coming in there. Very slow to load. Oh, why haven't we got results through yet? It might be running a little bit slow. But data analysis is the area where we should see our responses coming in. Eventually, we'll be able to actually get our responses through there. I'm not sure why that's taking so long. But that is where our responses will appear. And this is where we can do some basic analysis. We can also export our results. It's different to Google Sheets in that there are some workarounds to get it to collect live data. But more often than not, if we're exporting this data, we're doing it as a snapshot in time. When I hit export data, it's going to be the responses at that period of time. So I do have some options there. I can download it as a CSV file, an Excel file. We can actually have this as a Google Sheet, but remember, it's not going to update those values live. But various things we can do there to actually export our results. I have no idea why that is taking so long to collect results. Oh, there we go. We've got some results there. Thank you. So we've got some results here under the results tab. Reports is where you can actually create custom reports if you want to. Again, we're not going to have time to dig into that today. We're just looking at the essentials. But if we go to the reports tab, this is where you can create a custom report to analyze your data and to show it around to other people if you so wish.